Welcome to another episode of Ideas Have Consequences with me, Larry Alex Taunton, and I am in Mexico City. I came down here the day after the presidential election, and I had this trip, planned for quite some time because, as many of you will know, I've been tracking migrant caravans and really looking into the corruption of what is really a massive human trafficking operation for about the last 5 years. I've been doing it all over South America, Central America, and here in Mexico City, which is part of North America. A lot of Americans get that wrong. And I knew that the presidential election was going to really affect this in a big way, one way or the other. It was going to have an influence on this. And so I felt like it was important that I get down here after the election. So after the euphoria, and by the way, I am still pretty pumped about what happened, last week. I am so pumped about the election. And it was so fun. Lawrence Fox and myself, we recorded an episode of WTF, World of Taunton and Fox. Whenever you see WTF, it should remind you of World of Taunton and Fox, because that's what it means. That's what it's about. It's about that very popular new podcast that we do together. And we just had so much fun just, shouting, just cheering, just being so excited about what's happened. And let me explain to you why I am so excited about that. Just reflecting on that, beyond the obvious fact that I am not a Democrat and I wanted to see a Republican win. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot relate to you. Maybe some of you will absolutely know what I'm talking about here, but I have felt such a heaviness for at least the last 4 years. Before that even, because of what they were trying to do to Trump, which was so bogus, it was so wicked, it was so contrived, it was so evil when he was president of the United States, and the two impeachments and the stonewalling, the lying in media, the Russian collusion narrative, which was complete nonsense, all that stuff. But the last 4 years, I just haven't had a pride in being an American. I haven't had a pride in my country. I've had a pride in what my country was, but not what my country is now, not what the Biden administration was doing. I was not proud of the fact that we provoked a war in Ukraine, and we did. We did. We absolutely did. You go look at the podcast that I've done on that. I wasn't proud, am not proud of what my country was doing with irreversible adolescent sex change operations, with the annihilation of the unborn, with drag queen story hour, with Marxism in school, with race baiting and the constant growing tension, deliberate tension being caused between the races, open borders, a government that was hostile for the first time in my life, hostile to the American people, saw them as deplorables and garbage and everything else that you can think of. Not proud of any of that. And I felt such a heaviness, such a burden about all of that where my own country is concerned. And so for Donald Trump to win, and going into that, I just was on pins and needles because I knew the Democrats were going to cheat. I just didn't know if they'd be able to cheat enough to win. Look at what they've done in Arizona and elsewhere. It is very telling that Kamala Harris only won in states that did not require voter ID, that did not require it. That to me is so very telling, which means it's the only way they can win even in those states. This would have been a Reagan-Mondale sweep as it was in 1984. That's just how decisive this was. Now, is my hope in Donald Trump? Well, no, my hope is in Jesus Christ. Donald Trump is a man, and he's flawed like the rest of us, and he can and will fail us on some things. However, already I am seeing so many things that are coming out that I'm just like, yes, 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 and yes, that he's going to have a nationwide federal ban on these irreversible adolescent sex change operations. He's not going to allow them. That to me is wonderful. He's not going to have Nikki Haley or Mike Pompeo in his administration. That is wonderful that we're pulling out of the Paris climate accords. That is great news. That they're threatening to defund NATO if NATO continues to suppress the free speech of Elon Musk and Twitter in Europe. I mean, they're already making the moves that I want to see them make. They're going to pull out of this war. Your children, ladies and gentlemen, you are silly if you are someone who doesn't recognize what the election of Donald Trump does for you. Be you Democrat or Republican, your children or your grandchildren were going to eventually, almost certainly, be affected by, if not being actually sent to fight and die in a war in Ukraine. I mean, we were headed towards that. We were headed towards a potential thermonuclear war. I mean, we've been provoking Russia, a nuclear power, and this is not headed in the right direction. So all of these kinds of things, everything from lockdowns and the assault upon the Christian faith, I'm just excited that Donald Trump is going to have a huge Let's Celebrate America's 250th birthday party celebration. And where's he having it? Los Angeles? Madison Square Garden in New York? No, in Iowa. I mean, that's wonderful. You know, it's Field of Dreams. I mean, it's the heartland of America. That's the kind of place it should be. There, or Texas, or Alabama, or Tennessee, someplace like that, but not in some godforsaken blue hellhole. So these are all things that have me very, very excited. Now, there's a lot of work to do, and my concern is that the American people who spoke so decisively in this election, that they will go, okay, well, now, we can go back to business as usual. We've saved the country. No need to worry about this anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, we will end up right back where we were before this election, and worse, if we do not make hay, to use an old expression. We have to take the opportunity to really seek to change the culture, to seek to change our government. We need to change our government at so many levels, from the Department of Education to how voting is done in this country. It needs to be reformed. I mean, as I speak, California still hasn't delivered its votes. It hasn't declared a winner there. I mean, it's incredible. And this is corruption, and they know it's corruption. This is why they do these kinds of things. And they're trying, of course, to steal seats in Congress. That's partially what's going on. You've noticed that Republican hold on the House of Representatives has actually dropped. I mean, initially, Republicans had 218 seats, and now that suddenly is has fallen, and that's fallen because there is cheating that is going on as we speak. So there's a lot that needs to be changed. It needs to start with our children, you see, because Democrats have been playing the long game. By that, I mean that they decided that the way to victory was to capture the minds of children, and that in capturing the minds of children, they would eventually capture the culture. And so they focused on education. They focused on entertainment. They focused on the music industry. They focused on all the kinds of things that children were consuming or were being taught. And knowing that they would eventually be their shock troops for, Antifa and BLM to actual voters. And that stuff has to be reversed. We have to get back to teaching our children about actual history, for love of this country, for its potential, and for all the things that we as Americans could and should be. I have said that I really hope that Donald Trump does not look at this victory as an opportunity to go, well, I did it. Look at what I did. I'm Donald Trump. I did this. I won this election. I saved America. I'm reminded of Daniel chapter 4, where Nebuchadnezzar walks out onto the roof of his palace and he looks over Babylon and he declares, and I paraphrase here, I have created this with my own hands, and God judged him in that very moment. I said in a previous podcast that Romans chapter 1 is a picture of a culture that goes off the rails, what any culture looks like when it goes off the rails. And it says in Romans chapter 18 through 32, it says that that there is the suppression of belief in God, and that eventually leads towards a debased mind. I mean, that's the very bottom. It's a downward spiral. You suppress belief in God, and there's this long downward spiral. And when you hit rock bottom, it's a debased mind. And it's to do those things that ought not to be done. I mean, that's where we have been as a people. And part of the first step towards a debased mind is thanklessness. It's being thankless. It's not giving God credit for the things that God has done. It's not thanking him for the things that he has done. And I hope that we as a people, I've said this in 2 previous shows, and I'm going to say it again. I hope you will not mind me saying this again, because I hope you'll just pause this podcast right now and say a prayer and give thanks. Thank you, Lord. This was a stay of execution. This was a stay of execution. It was God saying, I'm going to give you another chance. I am going to give you another chance. You are a wicked people. You are doing wicked, wicked, wicked things, especially to children. And you have ignored me, and you have given yourselves the credit for your wealth, for your freedom, and for the great things that you have accomplished as a people. You have given yourselves the credit for that. And you have robbed me of the credit that I am due, of the praise and worship and thankfulness that I am due. And I hope that you'll just pause right now. I'll be here when you get back. But just pause right now and just say a prayer. Maybe it's the first prayer you've ever said in your life. But you just say, Lord, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for saving this country. And let us also pray, Lord, don't let us waste this opportunity. Give us wisdom, give us strength, give us the energy to move forward, to do the things that we need to do, to save children, to do the things that we need to do to preserve freedom, and not to preserve freedom just so we can go to the lake on the weekends. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Not just so that we can enjoy a good ball game like Alabama's beat down of LSU. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's actually quite wonderful. Sorry to any LSU fans. I love you. I do. But freedom is a gift, and it's an opportunity to do wonderful things. And there's wonderful things that we can do on behalf of American people, the citizens of this country, who come first, by the way, not Ukrainians, not illegals, not some other part of the world, but Americans. You know, the driving impulse of every American politician, of every politician, but of American politicians especially, given our Constitution and the principles upon which this country was founded, is this. Every American politician should get up in the morning and ask themselves, what can I do this day to make life better for the American people? What can I do to make them safer? What can I do to ease their burden? You know, it's interesting because Jesus, in condemning the Pharisees, who were, teachers of the law, he says, you won't lift a little finger. You don't lift a finger to ease the burdens of the people. You know, it's this image of the people who are burdens just from the cares of life, and they're carrying those burdens. And he says, and you won't even get behind them and lift one finger to ease their burdens. Woe unto you, he says. And so it is with our politicians. Woe unto you. You won't lift a finger to ease the burdens of the people. You have seen them electing you. If, in fact, they did elect you, in some cases, I suspect they did not. You have seen it as an opportunity for self-aggrandizement, for self-promotion, for self-enrichment, for self-empowerment, rather than going, I have been given a sacred trust. I have been given a sacred trust by the American people, and I will not waste it. I will make good use of it. I will make very good use of it. And I will accomplish something very wonderful here on behalf of the American people. that's what I will do. I'm here to work. Mr. Smith goes to Washington. I mean, that's what we're looking for in our politicians. Unfortunately, we haven't had it. But I do hope with this administration, I think very highly of J.D. Vance. I'm a huge fan of J.D. Vance. And I believe Donald Trump is the man for the hour. And I hope that he lives up to it. I hope he gives thanks. I hope J.D. Vance gives thanks. And I hope they don't see this as, okay, we're in. I don't think they're going to do that, but I just really, really hope that the next 4 years are what we believe they can be, and that we use this not as an opportunity for revenge. Trump has said, and I can appreciate this, that he does not see, he's not been running on a platform of revenge, but I do believe we need to see justice done. Justice needs to be done with the Faucis of the world, with the Millies of the world, with others who have done great harm to the American people and who have themselves been so incredibly corrupt. Justice, for there to be no justice, is to make a mockery of the law, which is to make a mockery of our Constitution and our country itself. It simply cannot be permitted when we're talking egregious offenses against the American people. So I do hope we see those kinds of things happen. Something I'm very excited about, maybe one of the things I'm most excited about, is seeing Elon Musk. I mean, how many times have Americans wanted to see a bloated American government bureaucracy downsized? It's never happened. Reagan tried, and Reagan made, great progress in that regard. But by and large, American government has just done nothing but balloon since World War II. It has absolutely ballooned. It is out of control. And there are billions of dollars going places we don't even know where they're going. We have no idea where they're going and how they're being used. And I think in many instances, they're being used in very nefarious ways. I am looking forward to seeing, an office of government efficiency. That's pretty awesome. And who better to head that up? Not a bureaucrat, but Elon Musk. And I am hoping that he can do to the U.S. government what he did to Twitter. I think Twitter, I'm not positive about this. I should have looked this up before I came on this evening. It's very late here in Mexico City. And again, I've been out all day today, very busy. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a few minutes. But
as we go through life, the years bring us wisdom, experience, and memories we hold dear. Yet with age, our health often faces new challenges. It's a natural part of life, but it's crucial to address these changes with the right care and attention. For me, one of the ways to stay sharp is to supplement. I've been using Liver Health Formula, and I recommend you try it for yourself to see the results that it can bring. And right now, I think is the time to start taking care of your liver, because there is a silent epidemic affecting 100 million Americans. 1 in 3 Americans suffer from an overworked and sluggish liver. It affects our weight, energy levels, clear thinking and productivity, and even sleep. Our livers get bombed every day with GMOs, microplastics, toxins, and all of the stuff that you might not even know about. Liver Health Formula can support your liver to minimize the impacts of all of this. It is a premium supplement designed with 11 clinically proven botanicals to support and detoxify your liver, helping you feel revitalized and ready to conquer each day. Just listen to Mr. Harrington's testimonial, who shared his transformative journey. At first, I was skeptical, but the health improvement has been nothing but amazing. The tired, foggy feeling I've had is gone. I have more energy for a longer duration. Also, the service and delivery is always prompt. Of course, results are not typical, thus you have to see for yourself. There's an exclusive deal for my audience. Head to getliverhelp.com/Larry. And as a special offer, you'll get a free 1-month supply of nano-powered omega-3s with your order. That's getliverhelp.com/Larry.
I think Twitter had something like 7,000 employees, and that now he's running it with like 300 employees, maybe even less than that. And people said, oh, he's going to regret that. It'll never work. He can't do that. but he has, and he's making it make a profit, which it wasn't achieving before, and it has become the number one news platform, and it is a free speech platform, and without it, Trump doesn't get elected. It's just as simple as that. He saved free speech. But I'm looking forward to Elon Musk coming into the U.S. government and going, "You're fired. You're gone. You people, this entire branch of government, this entire department, gone. Don't need you. See ya." I am looking forward to seeing billions, possibly trillions of dollars being slashed in U.S. government to a bloated bureaucracy, getting rid of all of these superfluous agencies, departments, and people. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful too if he reduced taxes to an optional $8 a month subscription like Twitter? Love to see him do that too. But I mean, the American people deserve to see these things done. And they almost never happen because usually government is a bit like a creeping weed. It's actually a bean that we see in the South. It's a vine that we call kudzu. And anybody who knows anything about kudzu knows that kudzu is almost unstoppable. That stuff will consume a house, if it's not cut back in a summer. Where I live is actually a very rainforest environment. And when people talk about, man destroying the environment, I always think to myself, are you kidding me? I mean, if I don't mow the lawn for just a summer, nature will consume my home. It will consume my home. And absolutely, you'd come home and the grass would not just be uncut and high, but I mean, animals would have moved into my house, and kudzu would be taking over the place. And you give it a couple of more summers, and you probably won't even see a house was ever there. I mean, kudzu is this creeping vine that grows incredibly fast, and government is a bit like that. It's like once it grows, it doesn't ever go back. It just keeps growing and growing and growing. So the federal government has been growing exponentially since World War II, and we need to see the size of government shrink. So I have to say that for myself, that one of the things I am most excited about, I mean, right up there with getting us out of a war, a potential thermonuclear war with Russia, and with a federal ban on gender transition surgeries, and so many other things that they're doing. I think right up there for me is I'm looking forward to watching an honest to goodness, successful businessman come into government, not a bureaucrat, but an actual very successful businessman who did this with Twitter, come in and say, don't need that government, don't need that. We streamline this one. We can do this. We can do that. I mean, that's going to be fascinating to watch that. Now, one of the things that we need to be very aware of is that Democrats are already preparing. They're already preparing to stonewall, just like they did between 2016 and 2020. They are preparing to stonewall as much as they can. They're preparing to try to gum up the works for Trump in order to make him as inefficient as possible so that he can't carry through any of the things that he really wants to carry through. That's their goal. I'm already seeing discussion of some, possibly Supreme Court justice or two retiring, so that they can try to get a couple of younger Supreme Court justices in on the bench on the left. I've even seen it suggested that, that Biden should appoint Kamala Harris as a Supreme Court justice. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, she is such an idiot. But I think that between now and when Trump is inaugurated on January 20th of 2025, you will see some shenanigans. There are going to be some things that are going to happen. Now, Kamala Harris, whether she was sincere or not, that's a completely separate question. But even though she did it, way later than she should have, but she did finally give a concession speech. And what she said, she did say the right things. I was glad to hear that. She wasn't urging riots. She was urging a peaceful transition and obedience to the Constitution. So did do that for 4 years, but okay, whatever. She is saying it now. I'm grateful she said it. Joe Biden said the same things. I heard his remarks in full about Trump's victory, and he said the same. I will tell you, I actually think Jill and Joe Biden are almost as excited as the Vances and the Trumps are, because they did not want to see Kamala Harris win. I think they've been very bitter about the fact that Joe was deposed. There was a palace coup to get rid of him and replace him with Kamala Harris. I think they've been very wounded by that personally, and I think they probably even voted for Trump, honestly, just as a final, FU to the people who did this to them. But I think they were pretty giddy. If you go and watch Biden when he's giving that speech in the Rose Garden, I think, about Trump's victory, he seems the best I've seen him for, gosh, I don't know, a couple of years maybe. He seems to be very aware of himself, and he didn't wander into any bushes or shake hands with invisible people or start reading the teleprompter in the wrong way. I mean, he honestly seemed like he had his wits about him and knew what was going on, and he seemed happy. He seemed happy. I mean, I think he's giddy that Kamala Harris lost. He's not going to say that publicly, but I think that he is giddy about that. Now, let me tell you a little bit about what I am doing down here. As I mentioned before, I wanted to see, because I have been following this, I've been developing expertise on the immigration issue. And it's one thing to read what other people are saying about it. It's quite another to make the journey down here and to look at all levels of it, not just what is happening on this side of the border, what immigration policy looks like, or even on the border itself, but who these migrants are, where they're coming from, the travails that they are enduring to come to the border, who's helping them, who isn't helping them, who they are and where they're coming from. I mean, all those details I wanted to know. And so, as I say, I've made a dozen or more trips down here over the course of the last 5 years or so to look at this. And I've been all over South America and Central America, straight up here to Mexico City. And I was pretty sure that the election was going to have a demonstrable influence on the immigration issue. So I thought, what's going to happen here if they think that Trump is going to win, or Trump does win? Will that lead to a sprint on the border, or people like, we only have a couple of months to get in there before he's inaugurated? So would it mean much larger caravans, or would it have the opposite effect, that people would go, no point going now because he won, and it's going to take us more than a couple of months to make the journey and to try to cross the border? We just as well turn back. So I was curious. And then if Kamala Harris won, would it just be business as usual? Or, I wasn't really sure. So I thought, I got to come down here and get a look at this and see what's going on. So I came here to Mexico City first. Mexico City isn't the last stop before the U.S. border. I mean, from Mexico City to McAllen, Texas, just to choose a place that you might know in Texas that sits right on the U.S.-Mexico border, it's about 600 miles. So that gives you some idea of how far south Mexico City is from the U.S. border. So when migrants arrive here, they still have a long way to go, but it is almost the last stop for them, because this is where they get on La Bestia, the beast. It's a train that they get on. You probably have seen these images, perhaps in the news or on social media. It's a freight train where you see, hundreds of migrants all on the top of this train. And this train runs the length of Mexico, and it makes a stop in Mexico City long enough that these migrants climb onto it. They get onto the top of it. And again, they call the train La Bestia, the beast, or the train of death. And they call it that for a reason, because it's deadly. People are murdered. Some people are thrown off of the train and are killed. Some fall off and die. And just the sheer desperation and the sheer numbers of people on this train, and then their exposure to the elements for days as they make their way north. And then even once they get there, they still have to try to cross the U.S. border. So it's not easy.
I want to make you aware of a course that I have filmed, that I've put together. It took a lot of time for me to put this together, and we're calling it Social Justice Exposed. It really is a comprehensive course for understanding Marxism. And these are days, by the way, where you need to understand what Marxism is. It's 49 chapters, almost 3 hours long. It's a kind of masterclass in Marxism. Now, it's a $99 value for just $49. Now, what do you get? A lifetime access to the course plus a year membership to my private community, The Posse. Join The Posse. Members of The Posse get access to private chat rooms with other members, invites to monthly online book club meetings, which I'm very excited about. I'm going to be doing this little book, Ex Tenebris, by Russell Kirk. First, you'll get access to exclusive video content, access to exclusive writings, discounts on additional course purchases, and the course available right now. Now, this took me a lot of time and effort to create. I went out to Dallas and we spent a couple of days putting this masterclass course together. Why don't you watch this trailer? Justice. It's a grand word, isn't it? It rides high over entrances to courts of law. It animates slogans and adorns banners of movements. The Russian Revolution, peace, bread, land. The Nazis, work and bread. Today, it's Black Lives Matter and Antifa. And it is on the tongue of everyone whose ambition is power, be he an aspiring liberator or a would-be tyrant. The slogans cloak a sordid agenda, Marxism. Let me be clear from the outset. The desire for justice is God-given. What we will be discussing in this course is how the modern social justice movement isn't the means of doing it. Social justice and Black Lives Matter are just words spoken by the ventriloquist doll on Marx's lap. And it leads to human degradation and ultimately to human annihilation. If you stand firm, you will be attacked. By equipping you in this course, I hope to awaken you to the horrors of the ideology. I hope you'll join us. Discounted pricing is only available for early members until the end of November. So please get it and join the posse. I look forward to engaging with each of you.
So I've been here before looking at the migrant camps that are around the city. And please stick with me as I tell you something here, because I'm going to write a couple of articles about this, I think for the Federalist about this, but I think I can give you the most factual, the most honest, the most unbiased look at what immigration looks like here, what's actually happening. And I want to preface it by saying that sometimes neither side likes what I have to say, meaning Democrats or Republicans, people on the left or on the right, don't really like what I have to say. And it's because they become very entrenched in a view that's been deeply influenced by media narratives that are frequently false. And I want to say two things here are true at the same time. So understand me, hear me very clearly when I say this. I want the U.S. border closed. I want a sensible immigration policy. If I could, I would have our border protected at the threat of death, meaning that the way we would defend, the 38th parallel, the way we would defend Guantanamo, Bay, what we would do in situations like that, meaning I want men on an armed wall that make it very clear if you try to cross, you will be shot. That's the kind of border that I want. However, there is a kind of immigrant that I do want, and I want to tell you something a little bit about that. And I also want people to understand, I do not want people on my side of the aisle to be heartless as it relates to many of these migrants. And I have interviewed hundreds of them. I have met hundreds of them. I have been into the really difficult places where they are going. I am seeing what they're up to. So two things are true at the same time. One is we need a sensible immigration policy. The other is we want to have compassion for these people and help them. And the way that we can help them is to stay in their own countries. Now, I want you to hear an interview. This is just an interview that I did yesterday, way to the north of Mexico City. This is, I went there in an SUV bouncing around. My back from, having been broken before is sore today because we were bouncing along on these terrible roads, getting to this little town in the north where a lot of these migrants are gathering to border the beast. So we get there. And I get out. I've done this all over the world. Often my drivers are nervous when I do these things. But if you watched me in Egypt, I was doing this when I went to Garbage City. And, I've done it in Europe. I've done it in Africa. And then, of course, here in Mexico City and Central America and in South America. So I'm pretty used to this. This is not new to me. But I get out of the car and I am going to where these migrants are sitting. And you can see them kind of stiffen up because they don't know who I am. And I'm clearly not a migrant. I mean, to quote one of my translators, she said to me, when I was going to one of these places, she said, "You can't go there." She said, "Me? I can go there." But she said, "This is cartel country. You can't go there." And I said, "Why do you say you can go?" She says, "Because I'm Colombian." She said, "I'm brown skinned. They know I don't have any money. You?" She said, "Gringo." And she was circling my face like this when she said this. Now, of course, I've done this many times and I know what I'm doing when I do this. This is not new to me. I've been doing this for many, many years now and going into some very, very sketchy environments all over the world. And there's an art to it and kind of understanding what you're doing. And anyway, as I'm approaching, all these people can tell, gringo. I mean, they can tell clearly that I'm at that, but they don't know what my intentions are. Are they hostile or friendly? Or am I indifferent to them and going somewhere else? So I approached them and I asked if anyone speaks English. And a young woman, to me, she looked like she was 15, but she would later tell me that she was 20. And if you don't know, I'm quite tall. I'm about 6'3", 6'4". And this woman, if I were standing, she came, to my armpit. I mean, she's just a tiny little thing. She's pregnant. And she spoke excellent English. And she had lived in Miami, she told me, for a time. And she went to Colombia for a visit to family. She lost her papers or something, and she could not get back to the United States. She could not get back to Miami. Now she's trying to make her way to the United States. Now she's Venezuelan, but she was fleeing Venezuela. And here she was. She had, and see, some of this is not on the video, so I'm giving you a little bit of background. So I tell her, look, journalista. I'm really a writer. I don't like to say I'm a journalist because I don't have much respect for journalists. I actually received an education. Most journalists didn't. But anyway, I say journalista. And she's like, okay. And I said, would you be willing to talk to me? And she says she would. And she tells me she's from Venezuela and that she's fled Maduro's, socialist hellhole. He's destroyed the country. And I've interviewed, probably, I don't know, I've met probably 100 Venezuelans, both in Colombia, in Panama, in Mexico, elsewhere, other countries, Costa Rica, who are fleeing socialism there. And that's what she's done. She couldn't feed her family. There was no options for her. She got to Colombia. Nobody wanted her there. So if you've been watching my commentary on this in the past, these people are not just illegals in the United States. They're illegal in every country they pass through. And all of them are going, America's that way, get out. America that way, keep going, get out of here. But these people, in the case of this young woman, she was doing what any one of us would do. She couldn't feed her family. She didn't have a job. She had no hope. And so she was walking. And I said, did you did you go to Nikokli? And she perked up. She was very surprised that I knew Nikokli. She said, you know Nikokli? And I said, yes, I've been there. She said, you've been there? I said, yes, I've been there. Did you go there? And she said, I did. I said, that's cartels run that, the Decolfo. She said, I know. And I said, and you took one of those ferries across to Darien, to Akandi? And she said, you know Akandi? And I said, yes, I've been to Darien. She was shocked. Gringo in Darien? I said, yes. I said, but how did you get there? Because they charged on those ferries. And she said, they didn't charge us. And I didn't push on that very much because I was sure that meant something. They charged something. She was possibly raped. Who knows what took place, but there's no way they let her on one of those boats because they're humanitarians. All those boats are controlled by the cartels, all of them. And you can see that in the documentary that we did on this. These are like Zodiacs where they put, I didn't count the seats in them, but I don't know, maybe 30 people, 40 people. And then they take them for about 2 hours across the Gulf of Aqaba and dump them out in Akandi and elsewhere. And so here is a pregnant woman who is walking with 2 small children, possibly 3. I didn't get the full count of how many of those children were actually hers, through the Darien Gap, the most dangerous country in the world. And I could tell she had suffered there, but again, I didn't push too hard to know exactly what she had suffered there. And then she kept making the journey north until here she was now in Mexico City. Here she is. Watch this interview. This is a young woman right here, just outside of Mexico City. She's waiting with her family to get on La Bestia. La Bestia is the train that you might have seen many times with migrants all over the top of it, running the length of Mexico all the way to the U.S. border. She's from Venezuela. She's been in the country for quite a while, but she's trying to get into the United States. Now, she lived there before. She was once in Miami, went to Colombia, lost her papers. Now she's trying to get in this way. So you've been in this country. You've been in Mexico now for, tell me again how long you've been here?
2 months.
2 months. And La Bestia, how did you hear about La Bestia?
On social media.
Social media.
Yeah.
And what do you do? What do you do to feed yourself and to feed your family?
Because I don't have anyone that can help me. It's okay.
You sell it all on the street, and then you're able to get enough money to feed yourself. Does it cost anything to get on La Bestia? No.
That's why the community is free.
Yeah, and of course, it's very, very dangerous. You have small children here with you. What do you think about that? Are you worried about that?
Yes, because we don't know what could happen. Maybe I can sleep on the, it's a lot of things, but we just want a better future for them. Why did you, I want to sit right here because my legs are killing me. Why did you leave Venezuela? Because the president,
Maduro,
they're killing everything.
Socialism, destroying the country. So you want a better future for yourself. What do you think about Trump being elected president?
He doesn't like immigrants, and that's something
That's what
bad
you hear.
For us. Yeah.
That's what you hear.
But I think it's good because we can get out. The president wants to take him out.
If you didn't hear that, she says she thinks it's good that Trump won. We have all this street noise over here. She thinks it's good that Trump won because he might be able to depose Maduro and fix Venezuela. You want to go back to Venezuela. So you want to be in your home country. That's where you want to live.
My goal is to work in the United States and then to buy a house or something that's relatively better, to have a better life.
No, that makes sense. Are people turning back because Trump was elected? So the migrant vans are getting smaller. They're getting a lot smaller because of that. But you've decided to press on
And what has made you decide to keep going?
My family.
Because of your family?
I want a better life for my daughter and my brother and my sister.
Very good. Well, thank you for talking to me.
A friend of mine texted me after I posted this on social media, this interview, and I appreciated him saying this. He had watched it and he said, "You humanize immigration. You humanize it. You're the only one who's really doing that." He said, "I got to say, I watched this video of this woman and it hurt my heart." And I said, "That's not the half of it." I said, "She's 8.5 months pregnant. She's due this month, right around Thanksgiving." Now, she was going to get on top of La Bestia, on top of that freight train, 8.5 months pregnant, with 2, possibly 3 other small children, and her mother. Her mother's 38. In another life, her mother might have been a model. You could see that here's a woman who, had she had opportunity in life and not been born, as Jesus said, the least of these, she might have been a woman living in a fashionable neighborhood and with rings on her finger and living the best of her best life. But instead, here she is waiting for La Bestia. As I speak right now, that interview I did yesterday, and as I speak right now, that woman is on top of that train heading for the U.S. border. And I don't know if you could hear everything because the background noise was terrible, but I try to repeat most of what she's saying because I knew my voice would carry better than hers. She's speaking very, very softly. But I want to say this because I think it's important that you hear this. I hear some Republicans say things that are so vicious and so cruel as it relates to people like this woman. Are there people coming into our country who are criminals, who are rapists, who are maybe sent by foreign governments to do harm? The answer is yes. And there need to be mass deportations of people who are breaking our laws and do not belong in our country. However, 2 things can be true at once. We need a strong border, and we should seek to help people like this woman, not so she comes to the United States, but so she can stay in her home country. Did you hear her say that she was glad Trump was elected because she was hoping he was strong enough to topple Maduro? Venezuela was once the wealthiest country in South America. It's now as I said, a socialist hellhole. People there can't get a square meal. That's why they're fleeing. CNN says people are fleeing to the U.S. border because of climate change. That is complete nonsense. It is not true. They are fleeing because they cannot eat. They're fleeing because they have no hope. They have no future. And they're doing what any American would do. They're fleeing. And my respect for this woman is boundless. A woman like this is unstoppable. Holy smokes. And last night I slept fitfully. I slept so badly last night. And in part, it was because I couldn't get her out of my head. I gave her some money. I bought her food, and she was so humble. I took her into a little convenience store and I said, "Buy some food." And she took some crackers and put them on the counter. And it touched me deeply. And I said, no, buy more. Mucho más comida. A lot more food. Get more and get canned goods. And so she got a couple of more things and put them there. And I was like, no. I mean, let's get lots. Let's fill a couple of grocery bags. You have a long journey ahead of you. And then I gave her a little bit of money, and she burst into tears, and she sobbed. She sobbed. And she threw her arms around. That's how I know how tall she was. And I hardly knew what to say to her. Some of you who will post in the comments, "I don't care what happens to her," or whatever. As you treat the least of these, said Jesus, so you treat me. Please understand, I am not making an argument for Democrats to bring these people into the country. I am making an argument for helping them to stay into their own countries, because these people are fleeing totalitarianism. That is what is driving them to our border. And if we want this to stop, then it's a human crisis that has to end in that kind of way. And what I also think is interesting is some of the people who would post the harshest comments about people like this, if they had been with me, and some of them are people who would condemn me for doing it, saying, Larry, how dare you give them some money and some food? You're just helping them break our laws and come into the United States. To hell with you. Unsubscribe to this channel if you are that kind of person. I don't want you in my wake. Some of the people who would say some of the harshest things, if they had been there with me, they would have been looking in their pockets to give them whatever they had. How can you not be moved by a woman like this? Republicans should be the ones who actually care about them, because I promise you, Democrats don't. They do not care about these people at all. Zero. They are making cynical use of them. They pretend that they care about them, but they don't. And a final comment as it relates to this is the Biden administration created this human crisis. It is a human crisis. And they did it by basically declaring America a kind of Black Friday sale. Come on, everybody. Free stuff. So what did people do? Exactly what they knew they would do, that they would risk their lives in order to come to the United States to get all the free stuff that they were told they were going to get. And along the way, these are just the stories I've heard that I'm telling you. There are people been eaten by jaguars, by caiman, who have been trafficked, murdered, raped, disappear, shot, beaten, tortured, all to get to America. And the Biden administration doesn't give a bit, doesn't care at all about any of these people. None, zero. They bid them come. They created the human crisis. They created the human crisis not just for Americans, but for every country between us and wherever they came from. All the countries they're passing through, this is a human crisis for them all. They don't know what to do with them. So I thought it was very interesting that, the Biden administration has acted like, well, we don't know what to do with it. I mean, we can't stop it. It's just happening. It's climate change that's causing this. And then here this young woman says that since Trump has been elected, many of the people are turning back. And that's just through simple messaging, meaning the Biden administration caused it because they essentially marketed the United States as a freebie state. And through the simple messaging that Trump had throughout his campaign that he was going to close the border and there would be mass deportations, the moment he won, even though he hasn't even taken office yet, I can tell you that the migrant camps here, which I've visited 3 times this year, are almost gone. And why is that? Because people are turning back. They are turning back. Now, this woman is going forward, and it's because that's her only hope. She has put all of her chips in the center of the table, and she is rolling, the dice, because she's got no other option. It's America or nothing for her. But just through the simple messaging of Trump's campaign, people are going, you know what? There's no point going to the United States because that border is going to be closed, and because they are not going to give us free stuff anymore. That is not going to happen. So as you can see, the human crisis could have been dealt with a long time ago by the Biden administration stating, we don't want you and we're closing our border. However, we are going to help you. And the way we're going to help you is that we are going to help you to stay in your own countries. We are going to we're going to help you stay perhaps in another country, a neighboring country. We're going to provide some aid for some of those things. We're not going to use the aid in order to fly you into the United States. We're going to use it to help you get on your feet, either in your home country or possibly a neighboring country, but we're not bringing you into the United States anymore. We are not doing that. Our infrastructure is not built for that. We cannot do that. So the point being here is that one can have a compassion for real human beings. I believe as a Christian, we are called to have that compassion and to help these people. I've done what I could when I could in some of these circumstances to try to help many of them. However, at the same time, I'm very honest in telling them, I think the United States needs a strong border. And many of them agree with that. They will tell you that they think that makes sense. They don't understand why the border itself would be open. But I did think it was very interesting that here she was saying that many of these people have turned back. And the reason she hasn't is simply because she is very desperate. Now, I want to end on this very, very positive note. And by the way, and again, I go from here to Colombia, because I kind of want to get a look at the situation there, and because there are people there that I am going to meet with, and then I'll be back home. And but if you are not cheered by what has happened in the last week, there's something wrong with you. You should be very cheered. You should be very excited about the things that are happening and what future promise there is for us as a people to do truly great things, to truly make America great and good again. America's influence around the world is Jekyll and Hyde. It is alternately wonderful, powerful, a defender of freedom. And on the other hand, it is a country under Democrats that has pushed every sordid agenda. And in this case, I've said all the things at the beginning of this that I'm not proud of that my country has done. The Biden administration has been running a massive human trafficking operation. It's hugely criminal. And they have been using the UN and NGOs in order to achieve it. And the only reason they are doing it is not because they were like, we want to help all these poor people around the world. It's because they want power. They want to remain in power in perpetuity. That's the only reason that they have been doing it. That's the only reason they've been doing it. And it's hugely criminal. And I don't think we fault the people themselves, the migrants themselves, except for the ones who are truly criminals. I don't think we fault them because the United States government told them to come. We fault that government that told them to come, and we hold them accountable. And then we show genuine compassion for these people, and we help them return perhaps to their own countries. We help them to stay in their own countries so they are not on our border or trying to breach our borders. I think that is what makes the most sense. But I personally am hugely encouraged just by the fact that we have stemmed the tide in this election of evil, at least for a time. Now, this is not the end of this. We've won a battle. We haven't won a war. The left will regroup. The battle of Middle Earth, if you want to think of it like that, the battle of Middle Earth is ongoing. This is far from over. But you should take heart. You should be encouraged. You should be excited about what is before us. And again, as we end, I just encourage you to thank God, because he's the one whose help we are going to need. And this country is going to be saved. It will be saved by God. And it'll be saved by him using a people who are genuinely thankful and who seek his face and petition him for wisdom for what we do moving forward and power that we might succeed in this endeavor. Now, I hate to preach to you about that, but at the same time, I'm not sorry for it, because it's just so incredibly important that we as a people, we give Thanksgiving. So as we approach Thanksgiving, we're getting pretty close. I hope that you won't just say, like these silly T-shirts that say blessed. Sometimes even spelled, B-L-E-S-T. And I occasionally stop people who wear these shirts that say blessed, B-L-E-S-S-E-D, and say, by whom? By what? What entity has blessed you? What are you talking about there? Sometimes people say, well, by God, by Jesus. But sometimes they just say, well, my circumstances, I'm blessed. Well, what you're basically saying there is you thank yourself. You think it's all on you. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to get to bed. I am exhausted. I have a flight tomorrow. I am flying all day tomorrow in order to get to Columbia. And then I'll be in touch with you once I get there. So this has been another episode of Ideas Have Consequences with me, Larry Alex Taunton from Mexico City. Take care.